Yeah, we live in here. It's been a minute. We got to start off with the daily water. Said the same thing. That's what's up though. Yeah, it has been a minute, man. It's been a few months. So we got to start off with the traditional. We drinking the Eternal today. I like Eternal. The only thing that's missing from Eternal is it doesn't have a list of minerals and dissolved solids that I normally have on the bottle. They pretty much just tell you it comes from a natural spring and it has minerals that makes it naturally alkaline. So that's pretty much it with this one. And I got the cheap deer park over here too. They most of the events I photograph, they have this or Aquafina or Dasani. So I always got to keep my own around. But those in the chat, let me know what's been going on. Since I ain't been on in a while, I don't really expect a lot of people to play catch up on this one until later on the day. So, but other than that, we could jump right into it. This past weekend was my 10th anniversary, me and the Mrs. 10th anniversary. And we celebrated down at the W Hotel, which is pretty much in Center City, Philadelphia. It was a fun time, y'all. And let me tell you, for the 10 years that we've been together, our marriage was a small marriage. We never threw a party for ourselves, so to speak. So this was kind of like a very high end but low attendance reception, if you will. And there was about 19 of us in the suite. The place allows 16 as far as company, but of course there's photographer, DJ, stuff like that. Thanks, Jeff. And what's going on with you? But funny story, and I've told quite a few people this story as like friends in the gym and stuff like that. That was interesting about the day. And everyone knows this past weekend, if you're a football player like that, or if you follow football like that, the Eagles played the Dolphins. And funny story is, the wife finishes getting the makeup and the hair and all that stuff done around about 3:15. So we make our way down to the hotel. And the hotel is in Center City, so we expect a little bit of traffic, but we figured 45 minutes should be enough. Well, if you're from Philly, Center City has it's a circle. And the reason we call it the grid is because once you're at City Hall has like a north, south, east, and west exit according to the way the city faces on the map. So Market Street runs east to west and Broad Street runs north to south. So we're coming down on City Hall on the Market Street side, and Market Street got a couple of ways you could go. So Market Street runs into City Hall, but we're going this way. And if you keep going straight, instead of going around the circle, you're actually going straight on 15th Street so that you can make the left turn on Chestnut. And we get to Center City and Market. We're literally around the corner from the hotel. And there's a bus blocking Market going across City Hall. So we wait for like 5 light cycles for this thing to get out the way. And when it finally is moving out the way, we hear the cops in the background and a bunch of them too. So I'm like, great. So this means we got to pull over. There's going to be a delay or whatever. So the bus gets out the way. I pull forward. I hear the cops coming. I get about a couple of, 10, 20 feet from the left turn I need to make. And then I can pull over and get the valet parking. So everybody moves over. The cops get in front of us and they get out the car while in front of me. And I'm the first guy that gets the hand, right? Like, hold up. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, it's literally like 3:56 at this point. Check-in time's 4. Our party begins at 6. We got to set up and do all kinds of other extra stuff that we want to do with the space and the location, right? And when the cop holds me up, 5 buses pull up. And guess who's getting out the damn buses? It's the Miami Dolphins, and they're staying in the same damn hotel. So, needless to say, that's nice and all, but we getting kind of pissed because it's like we need to be in this hotel as soon as possible. We got to set up for the party. My wife wants to get her headshots done because the background is like we have a deck that overlooks the entire city. If you guys saw the thumbnail for this video, I'm standing on that deck. That's why I use that photo. And So I tell her, okay, hop out, go check in. She hops out, calls me a few minutes later. They're blocking me from getting in too. So the cop comes up to my window. I tell him, he's trying to tell me to go down Ludlow, which goes in the opposite direction. It's like a halfway street between Market Street and Chestnut. He tries to tell me to go down there, and I'm like, I can't. I'm literally around the corner from where I'm going, and you're stopping me from getting to the front door. And it's a big deal because you figure we're not getting like a regular room. We have one of their penthouses. So, you always got in most hotels, you got the main penthouse, and then you got like presidential suites and stuff below. And at the W Hotel, if you guys ever been there before, it's called the Wow Suite. And it's a good reason for it. So you got the extreme wow, which would be the top level. It occupies the whole floor. That would be your penthouse. And then right below it is the regular wow. So you got extreme wow, and then you got regular wow. The regular wow cuts the floor in half. There's only two of those rooms, and we have one of those rooms. And that's because there's no point in getting the biggest one unless you got a big enough, group of people to come in. So this is our 10-year anniversary. So this is strictly couples coming in, couples that we chose to come in. Most of them born around the same time we are. Otherwise, it would have been a much bigger crowd. So long story short, I tell a cop that I need to get in there. He tells me to wait for the first bus to empty and then slowly pull around the corner. So we get in there, and then I got to wait for the cart because the football team, there's 350 rooms in the hotel. The football team was taking 200 of them. So fortunately, I managed to get her to I called her and told her, come around to the other side to check in. She gets to the desk on time. I got to wait for the cart because we got all this stuff. I got my video equipment, my photography equipment. We got the cake. We got the gear we got to wear for the night. And so by the time we get in the room, it's like 4:45. So I tell her, get dressed. I got to do her headshots. And I'm just gonna set the room up. So I'm flying around the room. I'm setting everything up, cake, cups, alcohol, all that crap like that, getting set up. The DJ's supposed to arrive near 6. So the rule of thumb, because I've done plenty of events, I photographed a lot of events, weddings, parties, all that stuff. When time is short, move fast as quick as you can in the beginning so that you can move slow later on. That's the rule of thumb. Even if you feel like you're gonna have time throughout the night, so, somebody might ask you for cups and spoons or you can go get it. It don't matter. You want to make sure you do everything for setup as fast as possible in the beginning, because otherwise later on it's going to catch up to you. You're going to realize your whole night was solving problems and answering questions, and you're trying to have fun. So needless to say, the whole thing went over excellent. It was so much fun. The entire anniversary was great. For those of you who don't know, some of you guys know me personally, but for those who don't know, our birthdays surround our anniversary. So Saturday was the anniversary on the 21st. Sunday is her birthday. Friday was my birthday. So that's how it is. It's 3 days in a row. And this year was a big deal because it's the 10th year and all of this falls on a weekend. So we literally pulled this whole thing together in like 2 months. So, but it all went over well. So yeah, definitely want to give you guys the update on that. And some of you knew I might have been going live. Yeah, I was going live back at that time, but I had a contract with Hewlett Packard, HP, and I was doing engineering for them for a while. So that made my schedule change. So a lot of the time I was working for them, I didn't go live because it's electrical, it's chemical, and it's software-based engineering. So that job, even though it's your regular 9 to 5 and it pays well, it's time consuming. It's almost as if you're working like you're salaried, but you're getting paid as a 9 to 5. So the job was fun, and like I said, it paid well, and I definitely gained a lot of expertise out of it. But it works like a salary job. It's almost like guys who had that job were engineers, and they were literally consumed by it. So a lot of the times they tell you when you get free time, take it, have fun, have vacations, take time off, and all that. But when you're working, you might be 8 to 5 with the 1 hour lunch, but you're sometimes leaving out 6:30 in the morning because somebody's stuff is breaking down and you got to repair it. You got to chemically balance it. They're having software issues. It could be one of a few things. So, but the job works like a salary position. And sometimes you get home at 8 o'clock at night. So you're basically like most 9 to 5s. You feel like you're living for the weekend. And fortunately, I choose jobs that I actually love. So sorry about that. I choose jobs I love, so it doesn't matter how late I get home. I still go hang and chill with people and all that stuff. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Jamar, it's magnificent. Thanks for the congrats and all that stuff, Jeff. You. But yeah, it was a great weekend. But other than that, moving forward, because I want to keep moving because I'm sitting in about an hour. I got a football game to photograph, so that's why I'm out here. It's real nice. I hope it's nice where y'all are. Our temperatures for the rest of this week, um, today, tomorrow is going to be close to 80 up here in Philly, so it's going to be nice. But I also had on the title, um, for those of you who've been and for those who don't know, Dr. Enqi is his channel suspended right now, which is why you don't see him going live lately. Don't ask me what for. I have no idea what what he might have been talking about to get him suspended, but right now he's on hold until then. But he looks like he's having some fun because him and an old flame kind of got back together. So if y'all been on his Instagram, you see them enjoying each other's company and having fun. So looks like a match made in heaven. So they rocking out. And it looks like I got 2 of the books are still at home, but just to show you if you guys aren't caught up, I got a nice stack of Enqi's most recent books. I got the ones that pertain to me. So I know he has the Race Hustler #1 for what's going on and stuff that's been like going on in the conscious community all crazy. That's not really my twist. So I don't have Race Hustlers #1. But Melanin versus Diabetes Research Book 1. I've read this whole book and I'm almost at the end of reading it a second time because most of these I'm not done. I'm only done book 1 completely. And I'm going through it a second time. Amber, what's going on? And that's because you don't want to miss anything. If you're going through a series of books, you want to kind of make sure you got all the little details before you move on. So I'm finished #1, which if you ask me in terms of a broader statement, this is a very important one. There's one other very important one I want to get to, but it'll be a little bit, and that's the Urban Biochemist book, which is book part 5. So it'll be a while before I get to that. Book 2, as it says on it, Melanin versus Diabetes Research Book 2. Then you got book 3, which is the fiscal edition, right? So we got that one. And then there's the book that answers the questions about Dr. Sebi. And I guess that would be the Carbon. So this would be the Dr. Sebi based book. This book answers a bunch of stuff about Dr. Sebi, the trial and all that stuff like that. So for those of you who if you have Mr. G's book, this will be a good follow-up book to get to it. If you guys have been following Enqi, and I know you guys know I'm cool with Victor, I'm cool with KT, I'm cool with Enqi, I'm cool with all them. But those of you who've been following the channel, they're not all cool at the moment. Victor, I think he's got some trouble with the law going on, so hopefully he gets things back together. I know Victor and Enqi had a live stream where they kind of fell out and they were doing their little back and forth. Enqi was letting us know what the deal is between him and KT. But I guess, it is what it is. They'll work it out somehow, some way, I guess, or they'll just go ahead and do what they do. You guys know I'm a big fan of team playing and, the best and brightest of the community coming together, but I'm also not one who cares in people forcing it to happen just for the sake of the look. So if 2 people disagree about something, they don't really jive about specific things together. And, that's where we are. It is what it is. So hopefully you guys out there who are into holistic health and wellness and fitness and all that, hopefully in your communities, you guys are building connections and coalitions with one another. So when you travel around, you have family, in different places that you can link up with. So don't let people having disagreements stop you from building your communities and getting together. They have theirs. We know Enqi and KT have come apart, come together, come apart, come together. They do their thing. Victor's young, so he's still fiery. So we saw how things got when he was on the live stream with Enqi, but eventually he'll get older, he'll get wiser, and things will be a little bit different. And the way people talk to each other and hash things out will be a little bit different. So these things happen. They happen. We want, like I said, we want our best and brightest to come together as one unit. Sometimes the ones that come together and make things work are not the ones you expect them to be. So for now, we'll just respect people at their levels of expertise that they're at and the things they do well. And just make sure if they're giving you something that's actually working for you, you support. If they're not, go do your own thing until, it comes back around full circle again. There's nothing wrong with that. Look out, look out for yourself, look out for your community. But remember, we're building as a community, so we have to look out for ourselves. We have to do our due diligence with our leaders. Make sure you research the things that they teach you. Make sure you check it out for yourself. When things work, say something. When things don't work, say something. You're not a hater. You're not being unsupportive. When you tell people when things don't work, you are supporting them too. That's how they improve. If you're only going to talk about good things people are doing, well, you're just a yes man and you're not really helping your community out. You know, we're going through this whole argument about voting every 4 years and 2 years and stuff like that. And that's not getting us anywhere because everyone's black or white. They're red or blue. They're Democrat or Republican. They're this or that. We don't get anywhere. It's okay to say, look, I'm not voting that way because this and that, and have a little hash out and talk differences. Eventually, you'll both realize you're not getting anywhere and you'll come to a conclusion on how to solve that problem. But if you're just arguing because you like one side better or the other, you're not going to get anywhere because that's just emotions. That's not facts, right? So, like I said, it is what it is. If anyone's looking at it from my point of view, what you're hearing from my point of view is I'm cool with KT. I'm cool with Enqi. I got no issues with Victor, but I see what's going on between them. And they grown men just like I am. They'll hash out their differences if they need to. If not, then they'll just do what they do, right? And that's okay. Just make sure, again, we look at them as leaders of the community. So when you learn from them, when they teach you things, do your own due diligence. I know we get caught in periods where we don't have time to do these things, but to the best of your ability, do your due diligence and let them know when things work. Say something when things don't work. There's nothing wrong with saying something. If they get upset, you can always take your business elsewhere. So that's just how it goes out in these streets, right? So we hope things go well, but when they don't, let's be cordial about it. All right. So yeah, that's the update. This book, if you guys have not been keeping up with Enqi on a regular, about the whole diabetes thing. And hold on, let me roll the window down. It get hot in here. You keep talking too much. About the whole diabetes thing, how he renamed diabetes basically an attack on melanin, or a melanin concentrating hormone disease, instead of high glucose disease, high sugar disease, or insulin resistance. It's more melanin concentrating hormone resistance. So it's a new explanation, a new take on it. And the cycles that control it, you'll hear him say things like the Enqi cycle, the Real cycle, and things like that. And that's just Enqi trying to make sure that, just like all other scientists and doctors are named for what they create, he gets named too. There's a reason they call it Newton's law. They call it the they'll say it's a specific theory of relativity. Like, people have their things, like what is a ohm in electricity? Why is it named the ohm? Because the guy's name was Ohm, right? So Enqi's just saying, this is how I look at it. This is what I'm telling people is happening in the body. I feel like I discovered it. I'm naming it. I would like people to call it that. That's all. People like to put Enqi in this bag, and it is what it is. I understand. Oh, you're so arrogant. If you think he's arrogant, you think he's arrogant. That's fine. That's a personality trait. So because you have a personality trait, you guys aren't, are you there for the personality, or are you there for the information? Because let me tell you, a lot of the people who created the terms and things we use today were not the most agreeable people in history. So whether you like somebody or not has nothing to do with whether the info is true or not. That's why you do your own due diligence. The same light that you esteem somebody in, you should have that same esteem for yourself. You should have the confidence in yourself to make a sound decision. And that actually determines how well you choose your leaders. Because if you have confidence in yourself and you do really good due diligence, that means you do the same thing with your leaders. Okay. So the leaders stand on the shoulders of the past leaders. We look up to these leaders to supply us with the proper information and know-how. We decide, after doing our due diligence, to take on this information, try it, figure things out, and then it is our job to give feedback, whether good or bad, and then support as such. Okay? That's what you want to be able to do in your community. That's how you take the pressure off people and put proper pressure on people who decide to stand in those shoes. Okay? So What else did I have in there? Since I last went live, we all seen what happened, Brother Polite. What happened with Brother Polite? It's a damn shame. Um, when Brother Polite first got started, I was not around as far back as what Enqi showed when he was in Black and Nobel and Brother Polite was bought out. I don't go back that far. I'm on the end. I'm like right on the edge of when Enqi was coming out of Black and Nobel and starting to kind of move around the United States a lot. When they were doing like the Dr. Sebi tour, they were in Florida and Atlanta and places like that. I kind of coming around that point, back when he had the God complex. I think during that time, man, what was the book called? It was like the Melanin book, and there was the water. There was a book on water and all that stuff. I don't go back that far, but I'm around that time period, right? So, but yeah, there was a time where just like how Sinetter was looking at young Pharaoh, they was like, "Oh, this kid has such a bright future," and even Polite and all them was saying it. Back then, when I was listening to Polite, I felt the same way. Like he's got a revolutionary thing to him, and it had nothing to do with the business stuff that you're seeing now. What I was looking at is the way he could explain like the plight of black people. Like he had a way of words. Kind of reminded me of not Ali Muhammad, the other guy who was a part of the Nation of Islam who was supposed to take over, but he was a Muhammad too, right? But he kind of had a way of speaking like him. And whether it was because Polite is good at memorizing or if he was really good with words, not what matters. What matters is at that time when he would wear like the long he would wear the hat and all that stuff like that, like he was the empowerment guy. That was the time where I thought he said he had his best time. Like he was speaking to the people and actually saying things that was more empowering to people. And I'll never forget Khalid Muhammad. Thank you. That's exactly what it was. He came into the conscious community the same way I was looking at Khalid Muhammad in the Nation of Islam. The nation he was up there. He was speaking to people. Different groups of people would come to him and try and say things to him about history and about the world. And he would pretty much knock them down with his words. So Polite had that going for him back then. And I never forgot the words when I stopped listening to him as much. I would still check in. I always check in on people to see where they at. I keep up. I don't usually just totally stop unless they do something egregious, which is kind of where we are now, right? But back then, he said, I remember he was explaining it during an interview. And he said that he was doing a lecture and it was young people in the crowd. And yo, Freddie Dow, how do I pronounce that? Fumbola? If I'm pronouncing it wrong, let me know if you got a way of like spelling the phonetics out or anything. But what's going on, y'all? What's going on? But he was being interviewed, Polite was being interviewed, and he was talking to the young people. He was like, yo, Brother Polite, yeah, I mean, that's what's up. He was, they talking to him like, oh man, you clothes, shoes, and all right, cool. He was like, but let me ask y'all, young brother, something. What y'all think about the lecture? And they was like, well, that was cool and all, but I mean, you driving the Ghost. And I think that had a hard impact on Polite. And it's funny because I think this was brought up to Muhammad Ali before, because they questioned Muhammad Ali in an interview and was like, you're always talking about money's not this, it's not that, and all that. He was like, but we see you running around in a limousine and in the suits and all that stuff like that. And I remember Muhammad Ali said, he was like, see, he was like, that's for the people. He was like, when the people see hear him speak and all that stuff like that, they don't always pay attention. He was like, because they want to know that life, the things that people crave in life is being brought to them through the message they're putting out. So Muhammad Ali, he said the limousines and the suits and all that, he said that's for the people so they can see. That makes people want to look at me and listen to my message. And I think, I'm not saying that Muhammad Ali is Polite. I'm saying that the situations remind me of one another, because when Polite heard those words from those young people, his mind went, let me get the glitz and the glamour and the fame and the cars and the jewelry and all that stuff like that, because that's what's going to get the young people to listen to me. The problem is where it went. It didn't get the young people to listen to him because it felt like, because he was bringing like this absolute magnificent info and herbs and food and health info that was really changing people's lives, at least not from my point of view. It seemed like it was more of a means to get a client to spend money on something that didn't really take really anybody anywhere. And that's where it all went bad, because you constantly hearing, you know, oh, this is a scam and that's a scam. And then I remember I learned long ago when Enqi was talking about the real estate thing that he got in. You know, if y'all know the story about Enqi getting a hold of Polite's laptop and saying, pay me my money back, or I'm going to take all the info on your laptop and dump it out on the net for free and all your books and all that. It goes back that far. And some people would say, well, Enqi's saying this and that, but I saw him hanging with Polite and but if you follow Enqi the way I did, you always you knew the explanation of why, because Enqi said he learned that I could no longer do business with Polite back then. Because it was like, I mean, you was having some money issues doing what you do, and I had to get my money back. I wasn't going to get got anymore. So when Enqi went out to California and was riding around with him in slingshot and all that stuff like that, Enqi was just hanging out with him. He wasn't doing business with him. That's a totally different thing, because Enqi tried to let it be known before that when I was doing business with him, I had some issues. But if you put that out there and people say you hating, he trying to get the community money and all that, and the people say they want to keep following him, that's when Enqi took his hands off and said, okay, y'all, people going to do what they're going to do. So that's how that whole thing went. But as far as me, I never actually bought any product off of Polite. My wife is a CPA. Polite was talking a lot about status correction, money making, a lot of stuff that's related to money making. Me having a CPA as a wife allows me to bounce his ideas that he puts out on live stream off of her. And the one thing she always told me was, when you get a decent baseline of strategies and how things work in the world, you can take the really big words, the keywords people want to hear: credit, debit, credit score, money making, cash up, real estate, hedges, investments, all that stuff. You can throw these things out and mix them in such a way to get a person curious enough to want to buy into the rest of the detail. And she said what happens is they explain it in such a way where people that she would have as clients would hear from people like him, dump all their money into it, then have a problem with it, and then come back to her. And when you have a CPA, a financial advisor on your team, you're supposed to consult the advisor before you get into the investment. And most people don't want to do that because they feel like it's weird. They know there's a good chance that their financial planner is going to say no, and they don't want to hear that no. So they throw the money out there first, and then they get mad and come back and say, I put the money into this. And then the financial advisor is like, why didn't you talk to me before you did it? I could have told you what made sense and what didn't. Or if it was good info, I can strategize you around it so that you come out on top. You see what I mean? People weren't doing that. So that's what causes problems when you have someone with a bit of celebrity to their name, meaning when they speak, a lot of people listen. It doesn't mean that they got to be ultra rich, ultra famous, but if they have a certain amount of money, a certain look, and a certain amount of people watching them on the platform, they have a bit of celebrity status. And that's what Polite had. So because he had that celebrity status, he would always say, too smart to be broke, meaning he could always put something out there that easily sounded believable, get you to buy into it, and then move on to the next group of people and do the same thing again. The people who got hurt is the people who got hurt. Some people bought into him because they were just curious and then they backed off. So you have different groups of people who were interfacing with him. But like I said, I was more interested in listening to him back when he was more in a revolutionary tip, not when he really got into all these business ventures and strategies on status correction and real estate and all that stuff like that. I wasn't really interested in that, because when it comes to investing in things and throwing my money out on stuff, I already did the study and I have a tangible I have like a map laid out on how I'm going to start and how I'm going to maneuver to the finish to get the result. And I've already done my research on it and called the proper channels and authorities, or just asked people in my circle who were good at things. So that's kind of how I go about things. I don't put all my faith in one specific person. I go as far as I can with the research, unless time's an issue. If Victor Bowman is the guy next to you, you don't know much about him, but you hear a lot of people listen to him. You got cancer and they give you 2 weeks. You don't really have enough time to do but so much due diligence. So there's a side of you that's going to trust. That's going to happen. I understand. And that's where things can be bad, when you get scam artists and people who are disingenuous about what they do. That's when it can be really bad. So I can understand that. You're going to always have a group of people who get caught up because they're in dire straits, emergency situations, or they're just celebrity struck, which is not a good position to be in, but they just so happy to be close to somebody with notoriety that they feel like they got to be close, they got to support, they got to do everything, and they'll even bang their head up against a brick wall for this person, even if they can't back up what the person is saying. And that's a shame when people get like that, but that's the world we live in, right? So with that being explained, You notice in my description, I put, um, is this the end of the conscious era? And the reason I say that is because those of you who've been around for a while, consciousness is not a new thing. If you're really into it, being conscious, what we would call consciousness, not just knowing your history and getting educated, goes back into like the 70s. You're talking about, I don't know Dr. York from a can of paint. I hear the name a lot, but you're talking about his era. You're talking about Phil Valentine. You're talking about Bobby Hemmett, C. Freeman L., Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben. You're going back to that time period. You're talking 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, like power players for the conscious, what we call the conscious community. And we went from an era where the information was underground and there wasn't a huge amount of people because, the digital world wasn't booming yet. You couldn't get that info out there to just anybody right away. You needed tapes and DVDs and word of mouth and stuff like that. So that was when it was growing. You had a lot of people getting into it. They would have these classes and, they would have a way of bringing info to you. And it almost felt like they were taking a large portion of the past by reading a lot of books, a lot of science, a lot of history, a lot of military stuff, and then traveling places the average person wouldn't go. The Library of Congress, the hidden archives of the Louvre, and places like that. Getting actual runoff copies from people who have secure access to rare places of books and pages and science and all that stuff. This is the stuff, Phil Valentine and them was getting. And they would compile all this and they would be able to see, kind of like the book Behold a Pale Horse. I don't have that one in the car, but I got it at home. The book Behold a Pale Horse was like a staple. It's almost like if you were into consciousness back then, that would be one of your textbooks because it was explaining things like the alien phenomena, books like the what's it called, the Tavistock Institute, things that talked about programming the minds of the people. You were talking about what was being done to the people in the past, currently, and what the future, like 20 to 30 years out, would look like. And in today's conscious community, really, the consciousness of what's going on now tends to only extend maybe a few months to maybe 10 years out. It's not something that's very mind-blowing. It's just small details about things we already know. Like, you guys know, people have been talking about the artificial revolution from the Phil Valentine's days. He was talking about how that was going to go all the way up until as recent as everyone's talking about the software now. So it's like the conscious community is only telling you about things that are close by that you kind of already know about. But what's happening is technology is advancing so much that the real awakening is going to be in the details of how to do this technology. It's no longer just knowing it exists. Like, y'all been hearing AI for years. But after a while, it's like, okay, they building robots that can talk back to us and act like human beings. Computers, like Chat GPT, that can listen to what we're saying. Oh, it's big data. They're recording everything we do. Our cell phone's recording. It's listening. They're running ads and they're doing all this. They're stealing our data. We've been through all that. So all we're hearing is extensions of the same. Like, someone will talk about, oh man, the new software can do this and that. So you're not really hearing anything new anymore. What's happening is people are just now revealing a lot more details about things that have been spoken about a long time ago. Like, even here now, in this book, like, Enqi is putting, the reason I read this one is because it's putting details to something that I thought Dr. Laila Africa was onto before he passed away. Because notice in his later years, all he kept saying was melanin was the key to Black greatness. And he didn't really detail it but so much. He just kept saying melanin this, melanin that, melanin that, melanin awakens this, melanin controls this and that. And he was clearly heavily onto something because he said he went to one of the conferences that the average person can't go to. I think Louis Farrakhan was even at that conference. So the fact that he was at these conferences, he was able to gather a lot of information about those things. And then what Dr. Enqi did was he went back and started looking at more of the future research regarding these things. And then you get out of the whole insulin pancreas box, and now you're into the melanin stimulating, melanin concentrating, FOXO proteins. The average person who hasn't been keeping up with the health information can't go that deep because they haven't quite learned how to balance out the basics, macros, carbs, fats, proteins. Okay, they heard them, but there's still a lot of people out there. If I say the word protein, they can't stop thinking about meat because they're taught that the protein comes out of meat. And then they go to the doctor and say, well, I hear that the meat ain't the only protein. And then they add a little more onto you, right? They say, well, they'll say complete protein. Same thing with iron, right? Well, I hear the iron don't have to come from the meat. They'd be like, well, that's the non-heme iron. What about the heme iron? So people haven't reconciled how to balance out. If you don't know how to play the balancing game with your information, it's going to be hard to study the deepest depths because you're not seeing the push and pull. When a person sees magnesium, they should think calcium. When you see potassium, you should think sodium. When you start looking at the big six, as I call it, potassium, sodium, magnesium, calcium, bicarb, chlorine, you're talking about water, hydrochloric, chlorine, hydrochloric acid. So that's two things your body naturally needs combined to give you digestive juices, right? You got sodium and potassium. When you start doing your studies and learning biochemistry, you start to see sodium potassium pump and how they do in exchange. And you'll even find calcium mixed in with that. When you study magnesium and calcium, you start to learn about contract and relax and how calcium contracts, magnesium relaxes. And then you start seeing connections in your own life. Hey, I needed a laxative and I went to the pharmacy and got magnesium citrate because it does what? It relaxes the muscles inside the digestive tract so you can pass when you go to the bathroom. Say you start to notice when your bones become calcified, when they harden, right? Say harden and soften. So when you learn to balance the push and pull of things, you build more connections faster and the study kind of starts to take off from there. And people don't make it there. They're learning things piecemeal. So they hear goji berries is a superfood. Oh, you need the pH with the water. You get caught up in trends, which means when a new study comes out that says something like coffee helps the heart, red wine, a glass of red wine a day, 2 for men, 1 for women a day helps the heart. And you're excited. And then 5 years later, we found out it's hurting the heart. And the caffeine is giving people palpitation issues. Now you don't know where to be because as you learn things, you're not learning the push and pull. You said you can't listen to 19 Keys, older than him. He says everything I heard in 2009. Yeah, if you've been in the community for a while, a lot of this stuff is not new, and we kind of get bored. We get choked off. Like y'all probably notice, like as time goes on, you probably feel like you're hungry for something brand new, something so revolutionary on the internet, and you can't find it because after a while, you're so caught up with everything going on, you don't realize that the power to learn the next best thing is in you, but you got to choose a lane and follow it. See, me, I follow the technology lane. So I don't just talk about artificial intelligence. It helps that I'm a video editor and a photographer because the software I interface with has to go through the details of it. And I can take those details and align it with politics and security. And they always align with one another. So while someone might say, hey, I can get 1 minute of Barack Obama speaking, the ex-president Barack Obama. I can get a minute of him talking, upload it into my voice software, and then I can talk for 1 minute, and it will analyze both our voices and actually change everything I say into ex-President Obama's voice. The reason it can do that is because the technology has been developed to do that. So if you can do that, it isn't hard for me to create a false voice and call you on the phone and use it as a scam tactic. I can sound like someone in your family, someone at a company. I can copy things faster. So if some of you guys, even people made an attempt at hacking you before, you notice the hacks are more sophisticated because they can build a company's entire web page and the only thing they can't duplicate is the actual name of the web page. That's why one of the ways you know that someone's trying to hack you is you can just go straight to the web page and log on. And then if you click on their webpage, it's usually a letter or a symbol or something that's off. See, one thing, because you know one thing, you automatically know another. You also know that if it's put out to the public, the military got to be ahead of it. That's why even though I'm not against the fact there may be alien life out there, I don't believe it the way it's being given to me because I'm one of those people who believe technology has gotten so well that they can create that to put a hold on the people. So I wouldn't be surprised if one day they show up and I find out it's real. But at the same time, the technology is so good, I can fake it. And Phil Valentine was talking about this in the 90s, how the technology could get so good, you could fake the vision of something. You could read the beginning of Revelations and literally have a holographic projection of that right in someone's face, and they won't even know that the person controlling it is only a block away. You see, the technology gets that good. So it becomes hard to, and this was their goal, it becomes hard to know what's fact from fiction. So after a while, I say that the consciousness era is dying because the consciousness era was backed by people giving you info. The problem is they made it hard to know if the info you're receiving is true. They just make it make sense. You see what I mean? So the only thing left after that is pure physical interaction and communication and interface with the thing you're learning. So if you're going to learn how, if you're going to heal yourself with herbs, you have to know how to do it and put it to the test and actually go test what you did. I have high blood pressure. This herb is known to bring down blood pressure. Okay. Does it bring it down slow or fast? Because if the herb works fast, chances are you can't keep taking it rapidly and continuously over time. It's going to be a smaller dosage over a shorter period of time because it packs the hard punch. But then you got other herbs like turmeric where someone says they take turmeric like, oh, I can feel an anti-inflammatory already. And I'm not going to argue with them because it's an emotional response and you can't battle intellect with emotion, but I know they're full of shit because turmeric is a slow acting herb, meaning you have to build it up in your system over a long period of time before it actually gives the result. So when someone takes a little bit and say, I can really feel it, well, what I'm going to say, that's your experience. I don't agree with you because you're hyping up turmeric, and turmeric is something that was discovered and studied and info was put out. So when people say that turmeric is doing this or that, I'm looking at the documents that they got the info from, and it tells you how long it takes to work. So someone coming and saying, I feel it right away, to me, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's bullshit. But I'm not going to call you out on it because we'll just start arguing. So that's a case of a person not knowing the info, and they want what's being given to them to work so bad, they lie to themselves about it. So you got this big, the community is one big mixture of decency and fuckery. And that's what you live in nowadays. So you have to respect that there's the good and the bad, and you have to be on your toes to deal with the flaws in your community and handle them right away, because if you let them sit, they get really bad, and then you wind up repeating everything you went through just to bring it together again. So we have to keep these things in mind. So yes, in my mind, the consciousness era is hanging in the balance, and it's not that consciousness will no longer be important or it will no longer exist. It'll just be common knowledge. Like people will be coming out. I don't know how much you guys go out and talk to people on a regular basis, but it ain't a thing for me on average to be driving in an Uber and talking to the average person in the car, and they're saying, oh yeah, you know, the chakras, and I look at this, and the terms that are used commonly throughout the conscious community is coming out of everybody's mouth. But what you don't get is you don't get large bodies of people talking to each other about it. You usually find each other because you say little things to see what the person knows, and then they start spitting the language back to you, and you're like, oh, so you into this thing. So it's more of us who are into consciousness than we think. It's a bunch of us out there. And because it's a bunch of us out there, we're starting to see a lull in any advancements in that area anymore, because everybody's conscious and they have their level of it. And even that's being, if you ask me, based on my last event that I threw a few years back, people still are trying to big up, pat themselves on the back and big up their chests with the info that comes out of it, because everyone wants to say they're on the higher frequency, right? And I'm not the biggest fan of the whole higher frequency unless it's put in proper context, because frequencies don't go in one direction. They're not high or low, they're broad, meaning they move out like a ball. Meaning there's times where you have to be on a low frequency. Like, are you going to call a bass player a lower frequency as a bad thing compared to, let's say, a high frequency of a flute? You see what I mean? You got to understand frequencies are broad. And because the frequencies are broad, you can be high, low, but what judges, when people try and talk about frequency, what judges how connected you are, when you would use it as a spiritual thing, what actually judges that is how well you can unify with things. Can you match the frequency of a thing is more important than talking about how high or low you are. Because again, if you're a high frequency person and can't get along with a low frequency person because you think they're so bad and ignorant, you can't do that. Well, how strong is your frequency if you can't, with your magnetic field, swallow that up and change it? because a stronger field will always swallow a smaller one. So you need to think more in terms of broad. If a person acts what you would call on a lower intellect level, in whatever reason, and you can't match and communicate with that person, well, you're not exactly as, you don't have as strong of a frequency as you think. You see what I mean? So you need to be more careful with how you use higher frequency, low vibration, and all that stuff, because there's a reason in nature for these things. If I give you a signal that is strong, but it's a low vibrational signal that travels very far, you can't detect it, but it's wreaking havoc, and you don't even know it. That's what the whole, for those who are up with their 5G argument, right? That whole 5G argument was based on, because you have upper band, lower band, you have different banding of the frequency. There are frequencies that are very fast, they vibrate very fast, and those frequencies don't go far, but they're very strong and they penetrate easy if you're within a certain distance. Frequencies that don't vibrate as fast, vibrate slower, actually travel further, and they actually can penetrate deeper. You see what I mean? So it's a distance thing. In cell phones, a higher frequency 5G can pass more data very quick, but you have to be closer to it because that rapid frequency can't travel far. But the slower frequency, like lower 5G, like upper 4G band kind of thing, those can travel further, but they don't send data as fast. You see what I mean? So it's all about knowing how these things work. You have to play the balance. The balance of scales is more important than you think. What's a poison? What's not a poison, right? Water can be a poison if you drink too much. It also has hydrogen in it and oxygen in it. And you know, oxygen can oxidize. These things can be very corrosive to things in a certain amount or in a certain chemical formulation. So again, we keep trying to find ways to say I'm better or I'm greater than a person because we just live in that era. But what really matters now is how unified we become. When you hear people talking about the fifth dimension and the love frequency and all that, and being consciousness and being woke, what we're really doing is we're combining all these factors to say, bringing a body of people together for the new age of what we would say is the Aquarian age, which is the age when love comes in and things unify. If everything you're doing is not creating that effect, then how useful is it? It's not very useful at all. You see what I mean? That's what your goal should be. If you think there's a bunch of wars about to break out and you think, you know, it's a time to hunker down, save your money and gain resources and have, you know, gold and silver to hedge against, there's nothing wrong with that. But what if you can't afford those things? Are you unifying with people who can? You can take $50 and say, hey, my man, you got a lot of acres of land over there. If it all goes to hell and I lose my spot, can I bunk up with you? If the food goes to shit and you're a farmer, can I pay you $50 a month now? So when things go to hell, I have you as an insurance policy to hook me up with some food. Did you go on the internet and find like manual pump water filters? So if all your water's gone, if they decide we got to ship all the water and food to the military to keep the war going to protect our freedoms, so you're not going to have as much food at home, you're going to have issues getting it. Are y'all prepared for that? Because they have pumps that can literally go to the dirtiest water supply and you'll get 1,000 filters out of that thing for you to be able to drink. And there's only $20 online on Amazon. So information is out there for every position. There's a little bit of truth in everything. And we circle and fish and swim through all of that to put these things together to help ourselves out. The future is automated intelligence. There's so much info out there. Some things by experience, you know, you can trust. Some things just make sense. So you just hold it until you need it. And then you got a lot of stuff out there. You don't know why it exists. It doesn't make sense to you. It's not connected to you. So because that exists and there's so much of it out there, computers are making all that accessible automatically. You see what I mean? So now you got Chat GPT. You even have the chat-based AI now. So you guys who are keeping up, you now don't have to be able to do graphic design and make a video and take photography. You can literally just type in the words of what you want to see on a photograph, a video, or a piece of music, and the computer will generate it for you. The only thing you can't do is you can't use copywritten stuff. So you can't say Mike Tyson and DMX in the Cisco video. You're going to have to create like a hack if you want to be able to get those things to combine, because it's seeing that that's someone's personal information. So it won't combine it. So those are things you guys need to be able to know. I remember I was just messing with it with something stupid. I said, I want a dog sliding home to home base on a baseball field. I just typed that in and I put HDR, 4K, vibrant color, because I don't want, if I want dull color, I would put dull color. If I want black and white, I would type in black and white, comma. You're just typing what you want to see, and you're using the keywords in that subject matter for the computer to produce that result. Now, what else about AI that you need to know? If you haven't found the videos yet, AI comes up to 4 or 5 stages. I believe it's 5. The 4th stage is considered the beginning of a sentient stage. We are only at stage 2. Okay. Stage 2 is the fact that everything we've been putting out in the digital world for the past, I don't know, back to the 50s, because I think that was when the computer game really started going in the military. Back in the 50s, you start typing things in, then there was the internet, and then there's hard drives everywhere, even the cloud. All of that data is stored and an algorithm is run on how they connect. And how do they know how to connect the data? You help when you play the games on like Facebook and Instagram and all them games like Monopoly, Friends with Words of Friends, and those things that say stuff like, in 20 years you will, and it'll have like it'll just make something up. It'll make up something like, oh, you'll be married with 15 children and have 2 houses or something like that. What y'all did was you even now, like I'm doing it right now, I'm live streaming and talking. I'm feeding that beast. It's literally giving the digital world my mentality about things, which means when you say, write a story about artificial intelligence and all that, everything I'm putting out on the internet, whether verbally, written, stuff like that, everyone else who's doing it, all of that's accessible. So it uses a combination of all that and what you do online to put a story together that matters to you, because it's taking your mentality and what you put online into account, along with all the other people who wrote it, to give it structure. And back in the day, it would be hard to explain this, but it's easy to explain it now, because they've been using everything that you've done on the internet to develop the next best thing. That's how you have Photoshop 1 through, when did it stop giving you numbers? Photoshop 1 through 7, then it was CC, and then you started getting it after the years. Photoshop 2020, 22, 23, 24, Photoshop Master Edition, Photoshop Elements. You go from the first one to the other versions because you're stacking algorithms on top of algorithms. You never have to recreate, because even when they recreate, when you see like y'all would hear about what? Sony Vegas, Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro, Avid Express. Those was your big 4 at one point. Now you can take algorithms from those programs, stack them to make a new program, and you get stuff like DaVinci Resolve. You see what I mean? You don't have to rewrite code entirely unless you're writing a new way for a computer to think. But even when you do that, you're taking the old way it thought and you're modifying the code. You're never starting totally from the ground level. And the only way, remember I told you guys earlier, you got to think about the balance of things. You could start from the ground level if you're taught the ground level. If you're not taught the ground level, then you're doing what you do with food. You don't know the ground level of growing food. You don't know all the stages they went through, the whole NPK stage when they was killing people because they thought they could grow all the food with 3 ingredients. You're jumping to just what's the best thing now in today's world. Hey, the supermarket has a new superfood, high pH water, this, that, and the third. They give you all these terms built off of other terms, built off of other terms. You never went back to the beginning. You never tried to literally learn how to get the hum and the clay and the fulvic acid and all that stuff into your own soil. Hydrate it yourself. Learn about water. Learn about what builds soil and what makes the plants react in the soil with the bacteria, with the fungus, with the bugs and all that stuff, bees pollinating and all that. You didn't learn that foundation. When you don't learn the foundation, you can't build any connections and stack it. So you stack it from where you learned it. So if in school all you learned was nitrogen, phosphorus, Kelvin grows the food, you start growing all your food with those 3, and then you slap organic on top of it. What you did was you took minimal information that's not going to help anybody, stacked it and put a new term on top of it and told everybody that's the healthy thing. They take 5-10 years out of their life doing what you said. They still get sick 10 years later. Now they're 10 years behind with false data that was made 10 years behind that. Now how far behind are you? Because you don't have a foundation and a balance between the two. That's the times we were born in. All this information's available. It muddies the water so much you don't know what's true. You only know what makes sense and the things you have experience in. That's all you got. Let me say that's crazy, it's deep. Oh, the rabbit hole always goes deep. So some people say, what am I supposed to do? Go make friends with people in different expertise in your area. That's what this was built off of. You're going to be good at something, and so am I. We're talking in a circle of people. Like, I'm talking to y'all, and I think y'all are listening because you think I'm good at something. But guess what? I'm hoping that if I'm in your city or state one day, I can link up with you and find out what you're good at. There are people who have been on my live streams that I've met personally. Amber's in here right now. Mike Carter's not in here right now, but I linked up with him before, even did a couple of photo shoots, talked about things he's done. I even know about some of the people that I've linked up with who have close relationships with celebrities that obviously I won't talk about, but I don't need those connections. I'm just saying that they exist. If you come out to my area, I'm gonna be like, yo, this is such and such who owns a farm over here. This is such and such who owns a store down here who does all vegan food. They even grow all their stuff. Here's such and such down here who's an herbalist. Because y'all know we know Enqi and KT and Victor and all them. But I got people around my way. I got Bayor Herbs in Columbia, New Jersey, and I've had a whole 2-hour conversation with him about how to combine herbs and stuff like that. I know about Nature, who actually did a lecture with Enqi and KT down in Florida years ago. And he's a master herbalist right now, and he's got mad degrees and certificates since that day. And I even try his stuff. You see what I mean? It's about connections. It's not about who's going to be my number one go-to guy, because what happened? All right, Enqi got all these nice formulas and stuff, but what happens if something happens to him? I got to hope Chase takes over and he's ready to go. So I got to have somebody on standby. And I need to know that I've given their stuff a test and make sure that standby actually is good. So I'm building the case for myself. And then I go get the physical experience when it's time. Because, if I don't have cancer, I can't tell you guys I have the answer for cancer. I can only tell you what makes sense. But at the very least, when that time comes, I can say, I got some peoples to go to, some things I can try out and test. And then when they're successful or not, I bring the feedback to the person and then to the people. And I don't just tell them, no, just rock with him anyway because he's cool. Like, I'm not going to do that to y'all. So that's what I'm saying. It's the AMPK activator. But you know about that AMPK Thanos. Yeah, so AMPK go back for those of us who've been studying for a while. It's mentioned in here. Where's the page at with it on there? It actually says it. Now I'm too far. I'm in the epilogue. There's actually a part where he actually says it straight up. It'll say AMPK. It'll say FOXO protein. Oh, my bad. I was looking at the fiscal edition. I was looking at the wrong one. There you go. Just ran into it right here, right? Let me zoom in on it there. Where's it at? It's right here. See that? AMPK, baby. Yep, that's what it says in there too. Fructose inhibits AMPK activity. Now we're using our acronyms, but for those of you who've been studying it for a while, you know that you eat the carbs. The carbs is a chain of 6 carbs, a carbohydrate. That eventually breaks down into 3 and then breaks down into 2. And then it goes through the citric acid cycle. And then after you get a couple of NADs or whatever off of that, you jump into the electron transport chain. You play hot potato down the transport chain. You make it to number 5. You spin the turbine. You smash the ADP and the ATP. I'm sorry, the ADP and the AMP. You smash the phosphorus together and you get ATP, so triphosphate. When one pops off, you go from 3 to 2, so that's diphosphate. When you start to run out of the diphosphate, you get monophosphate, and the K stands for kinase. So adenosine monophosphate kinase, right? Which means phosphorus is related to it, right? And these are ways that you have this chaining and unchaining of phosphorus to create energy or break down from energy. Okay, so AMPK, we used to say cyclic. So CAMP, cyclic adenosine monophosphate, you'll get things like that, right? And it's just a chaining of phosphates. Generally, when you wind up breaking apart ATP too much down to ADP and eventually get too much AMP floating in the system, usually at that point, you'll start to get tired. So you'll start to learn things like that. Okay. So am I like sweating in this joint? Like, yeah. But but yeah, so this information, I learned this information because this type stuff helps when I'm in the gym. Because the most annoying thing in the gym is I dealt with diabetes, high blood pressure. People always say, "What did you do about it?" I give them the simplest information possible. I tell them, uh, I tell them about the exercise. I tell them about the diet. If there's any herbs, I'll tell them what that's involved in. But they always eventually they don't want the complicated answer. They want the easy answer. You give them the easy answer, and then they start asking you about the complicated stuff. And you have to have something to say. That's the weird thing about it. So you tell them, yeah, I drank water, and this is the water I drank, and I exercised at this time, and I fasted like this, and I ate at this time late, and I ate my meals this far apart, every 2 hours apart, and it was only a smaller meal, but it was high protein, minimal carbs, and some fat in there, and I did it like this, and then you give them all that. Oh, but what you think about that organic high pH, gluten free, and then they start asking you all these scientific term based foods. And then you wind up having to break that down. You wind up going into science anyway. But they won't listen to the science in the beginning. They only listen to the basics in the beginning. You have to get through the basics so that they can ask you about the science. And then you got to know something about the science to justify the basics. Now they go tell somebody the basics because they understand the science behind it, but they may not care to remember all of it. They just know you made it make sense to them. So now they have a reason to trust in it. Now they got to go home and convince themselves to do the work. So both sides of the coin, it seems to be what helps the most. And that's kind of what the game is like out there in them streets, in them gym streets. The gym is where it's fun. That's where you guys get all your connections from. If you hang out in the gym and you got you a nice little squad, you usually get people in there who, like I have someone who's certified in yoga, owns an entire business with that going on. I got my old head Jim. He always talking about consciousness and the fifth dimension and meditation and all that. That's just his thing. That's all he want to talk about most of the time. He'll turn all your conversations into literally that. That's what he does. Um, I have a friend who's from Mauritania and Africa, so that's like my culture connect. So he tells me the culture of what goes on over there, because as furthest I've been close to there is Senegal. So he fills me on what makes African cultures different, like where he comes from. Um, you're supposed to, let me see, where he comes from, you're supposed to, it's all about taking care of your family. That's the biggest value where he comes from. So, and then you got the names, right? His name is a farming name. So when you grow up, you're doing the farming. You have another name who might be about keeping history, right? But then if you go over to Nigeria, you're rated by how hard you work and how good you look, not necessarily how well you take care of your family, because that goes with hard work. But the biggest value is hard work. So if you're working all the darn time and you dressing to the nines, even if you don't make much money, people look at you as important. So he was showing me that culture difference in that specific area. Then y'all know my partner, George Macon, with the Urban Nerds Worldwide, his specialty is history. So most of the time, my geographic knowledge and my historical knowledge about different cultures and groups of people, I bang heads with him off of that because he got lots of information about that. Me, I'm into technology and art. So if you're looking at graphic design, um, photography, videography, drawing and painting, the history of art, little things about anime and comic book making, working on movie sets, working with models, working with singers and all that stuff, art related stuff. That's going to be where my highest knowledge comes from. Because my art is studied based on the human body, I studied physiology and biochemistry. Because when you do your comic book characters, you want them to be able to perform something that sounds real. So you study the biochemistry to make your characters do things that make sense. So you don't just get Reptile in Mortal Kombat and Galactus and Marvel and Thanos and the rings and all these different technologies and stuff. That don't come from nowhere. That comes from knowledge of history and science. And they give the characters names based on that. So you'll have things like Electro Man, Superman, Spider Man, the what do they call it? Adamantium, and how that whole thing works with Wolverine. So you get these really good stories from studying history and science. It's just that I wasn't born in that time. So by the time I was born, all the common names was taken. So now you got to be extra creative, right? Just like in music, you started getting Puffy and Kanye sampling music. So you don't really get too much new. You don't get the most of music now with new beats. You get old beats with new people's voices on top of them to give it a different flavor. So let me see. What's my source for amino acids? Beans, nuts, and seeds. Uh, what's it called? Hemp seeds. Um, just about anything has amino acids in it. It's all about how many. All green plants, fruits and stuff, you're going to have some amino acids in all these things because amino acids is what make up proteins. So you're just going to get either a complete protein or you're going to get broken down protein, which would be the individual amino acids. But it's good to get individual amino acids, but combine a bunch of foods so that your body has all of the available amino acids to combine to make proteins for your body. And remember, I used to do a little breakdown of that on almost every video I did because people need to understand it. The carbs energize the body. That's what gets it going, energy. The fat is the integrity of the body, the skin, the layering around the cells. You know, they say, what they say, phospholipid, lipid meaning fat, bilayer. So phosphorus, lipid next to each other, chaining to make a bilayer. That's a fat-based membrane. So it's your sealer, like fat would be like your sealer, whether it's conductive or non-conductive, adipose tissue, so to speak. That's what you're doing with fat. Protein is the machinery that performs the action. But to build the machinery, I need the parts. The parts of the proteins or the machinery, proteins, aka machinery, are built with amino acids. The amino acids could be the bolts and screws and nuts and sealers and all that. But once they come together and make something that can move, it's a protein. That's the simple way to put it. Once you have a protein, you need something to activate it, and enzymes. Usually something gets inserted into the protein and causes an action to happen. Okay? And that's what gets things going. That's why Enqi will tell you enzymes speed things up or slow them down. Some things are a feedback mechanism. Because you do one thing, it forces the opposite to happen. Remember I talked about balance earlier? You have to have a balance of knowledge. If I have a certain amount of magnesium and a certain amount of calcium, I have balance. If I have too much of one or too little of one, things are too relaxed or things are too rigid. You see what I mean? But you tend to notice the same thing happens on both sides. Potassium's job is to regulate the rhythm. Sodium is to balance the waters. If I have too much sodium, the waters are unbalanced. I have too much mineral, things are becoming rigid. If I have too little sodium, I don't get enough electrical conductivity because it's just straight water. Water moves fast, but it conducts stronger when there's like salt in the water, right? So that's important to understand. And then you have, like I said, with the potassium, you have a heart issue if the potassium's too high or if it's too low, because potassium must be balanced, sodium must be balanced, magnesium must be balanced. You see what I mean? When these things are unbalanced, problems happen. It doesn't matter if it's too low or too high. Asking for symptoms and stuff don't mean nothing. All you need to know is what's the thing that's not balanced. Balance that thing out, problem goes away. Then it becomes questions like, how do I balance it out? In what ratio? What's the best way to get it into the cell? What's the best way to get it absorbed through the digestive tract? You know, turmeric, pepper, vitamin C, iron. So you get these different things that help bring things in, and then utilization. And then you need a way to detect the utilization, whether that be going to the doctor and getting a test or something like cayenne pepper. Like, how do I know my cayenne pepper's strong? I tap that thing on my skin or on my tongue, it should burn. If I can't smell if I got a seasoning cabinet and I open that cabinet and I can't smell nothing unless I stick my nose all the way in the jar, well, I know the oils and things are starting to dry out. It's not as potent as it should be. So sometimes getting herbs secondhand, not the strongest they can be, because you should really smell that thing. Same with the sea moss. Have your place smelling like raw fish and ocean water if it's very strong. But if I got to stick my nose in the bag and sniff real hard to smell it, it's not that strong. I'm not going to get that big of a reaction out of it. So if it's supposed to work in 2 hours, now it works in a week. And when it does work, barely get anything out of it because it's just not strong enough. It's not concentrated enough. The concentration gives off the aroma. Okay? So that's the important stuff. I've been in the mix since 97 and assessment has been the same. Yeah. So it shows you as a people where we are. So again, my answer to that, where we go from here. Oh, you said which color beans do? I do black and red most of the time, but those are the ones that I choose. Whatchamacallit, not pinto, chickpeas. Chickpeas are great, like for the digestive tract, and do chickpeas. But yeah, so the answer to the plight of the conscious community is you building a mini community around yourself that you can bring people into who are in spaces like this when they come to you. So if I had a following as big as people like Sinetter, KT, Brother Rich, if I have a following that big, if I'm putting all the pressure on myself, everyone's trying to call me, contact me, get with my connects, get close to this person and that person. But if I am one part of an entire community, I can let people know, like, hey, I'm gonna be in Chicago next week. All y'all who are online, where the community at, bring me in, show me where to shop, where y'all want to go work out at, where y'all want to go hang out at. Maybe we'll throw an event, get together and all be around each other, not a bunch of people looking to be around one person. When I threw my events, we came to my event to be around each other. So it's the art of life, hanging with Amber, hanging with Enqi, hanging with Marvin, hanging with Jim, hanging with all the different people there. We're all there. Like, man, the energy in here is crazy. I talked to this person and that person. It's a whole experience. It's not, well, everybody was going to Enqi and I didn't get to see him, but you know, what he was talking about was cool. I traveled all this way to hear him speak and try to get it just him. And you get your day ruined because you didn't build a community. You're just looking at a celebrity. And sometimes looking at the celebrity, you forget what's around the celebrity. People attract other people with the same mind state most of the time. So when you're around, if you go to where Enqi is, other people who are like him will be around him. So the energy of him is in just about everyone there. They may not have his level of information, but you could get plenty of it out of the people around you. And sometimes you'll find the thing you've been looking for. You're trying to get health info and you've been trying to grow your business and you met the person who can grow your business around the people with the health info. So build the communities where you are, build something tangible, because with all these people online, when I connect to them, somebody's going to have an answer to something when I need it. Because chances are, if I got something bad going on, yeah, I'm close to Enqi, I'll have a greater chance at hitting him up and having him help me. But sometimes one of y'all would be all I need. Yo, you were there with me. You studied that path more than I did. What did you find and what can I do? Well, he was talking about this and that. So I put this and that together and I had a friend who had this and that and I reversed it this way. So you're all I need. I don't have to go all the way to this person. Going to bed. Go ahead and do your thing, Thanos, because it's 5:41. I got to get off of here in a couple of minutes anyway. Because I got this football game to photograph and it's their senior night. It's kind of nice outside too. I hope y'all got them colors out where y'all at. The leaves turning colors yet? But yeah, so yeah, that's been the catch up. I'll probably, until I can do a creative live, I'll try and keep the lives kind of like this, where I'll just check in when I'm at a location early. But for now, you guys see my contact info and stuff down there below my name, right here, right? So Marvin Health and Arts, that's my Instagram name. Make sure you're following there because that's where I put like posts of food and stuff and places I go and all that. I do have the Urban Nerds Worldwide is an Instagram that also has a YouTube channel. And next to it right there, that's the Cash App. And the Cash App usually is me supporting something else around me. So either me doing something for Urban Nerds or buying new equipment to speed up some of the stuff I do for you guys. Or even sometimes to test some of this new AI technology because, yo, they chew me up with these monthly fees, yo, because all my Adobe products now is like $59 a month. My animation program that I wanted to get was $125 a month. Forget Netflix and all that. Y'all looking at the entertainment stuff. That's easy compared to the shit I got to pay for. Like, to have software for animation and all that, that might run around $500 a month once I combine all the stuff. So most of the time, if the Cash App starts to add up, you start to see, if you don't see my videos speed up, you'll see all this creative stuff showing up places and new stuff for me to talk about because I had the money to test things out. So that's how I get my testing technology. I'm studying what AI can do. And eventually you're going to see soon, I'm going to bring you guys a live stream that's like, now we're not talking about the future AI and it will become sentient. The stuff I'm going to start bringing y'all is take this program and do this. And this is how you actually use it. I'm not going to be, oh, it's a paid seminar and all that stuff. That's not how I do it. I like to be able to talk to you guys about this stuff. So I want you to understand it. Now, if we're going to put together a big project, we could talk economics and money because that's about how do we make the money swing between us. At some point, we have to include that in our community. I respect that. There are things that I say, I'm going to do this for free because you're nearby. You hungry, you need something to eat. You need me to help you move or something like that. Some things we're going to do free. But some things we need to intentionally say, economically, this will go to here and we will build this. And if I'm doing it, my job is to say, this has been put in place. Now, how do you want to move from here? I think we should do this. What do you guys think? I want you to be able to be close to and see a thing build. I want you guys to have something that you've chosen to see build and see it build. Like my new laptop, I remember when I got that, I was getting donations from all over. And I started showing people some of the backdrops and effects and stuff I was creating and little animations and stuff. I was having fun with that. And I don't know if you guys went back far enough to see it, but I got whole videos on how to use Photoshop and how to do photography. If you go back far enough in the chain, there's whole videos that explains to your children how they can learn to do that. There's even a video on Urban Nerds on how to play chess so they could think deeper. So these are the things that I was doing with the cash apps I got in the past, and they work. Trust me, they work. If you keep up enough, you'll always see where I'm doing something with what people gave me, because I don't need help being able to live. I need help being able to advance. But I think we all need that. So like I said, it's an economic thing. You don't always have to be on here giving to me. If you have something going on that advances what we're all interested in, then I'll get behind you and see if I can get other people to get behind you too. Because once you learn that thing, you could teach it to us or do it for us. And now your economics swings. So as we help one person helps another person. And I think in our community, we still got to get good at that. It's a whole bunch of pay for my event and stuff like that going on where the community's throwing a bunch of money out and getting a bunch of info back. But I already told you guys earlier, the reason the conscious community is drowning is because it's a bunch of info out there people can't test, and they're happy either because they can immediately use it, which is great when you can see that, or it just makes sense because it resonates with you. But we're moving into the AI universe where typing things in actually make a thing happen. So if you're not building communities where things you need can actually be done and happen physically, tangibly, well, you're just like Umar would say, it's just intellectual masturbation. You're just gaining a bunch of info and being entertained. But after a while, you'll have 20 years of gaining information and being entertained and no growth in your community. And if we're not growing a community, after a while, like I said, you get streams like this one I'm doing now, you start to get bored. You can't find anything that stimulates you anymore because you're full. It's time to move. It's time to build something so that when we start throwing events again, like if I have an event here, when you guys come here, I'll have, if you're here long enough, things for you to experience and do. So now you could say, if we go to Philly, we got that going on. We go to New York, we got that going on. We go here, 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 and here, and we link up with this person and get a workout. We link up with this person, make some money. We link up with this person to support. We link up with this person to help out with such and such. We gotta create a community where when maybe you come to Philly, you see me. You go to Detroit, you see Enqi. You go to New York or Atlanta anyway, you see KT. But we need more of that, and that includes you guys, because like I said, it's plenty of people in the chat that when I'm in their area, they're not big YouTube stars, but best believe I'm having fun and I'm hanging out with them. It happens. All right, peoples, let me, no problem. Thanks a lot, Amber. Thanks. George, I see you in the building. Young DC, Thanos, Ethan Bola, where we go? We go far back. We see more people. Jeff Yu, Jamars, Magnificent Beats, Freddie. I know the Art. He was in here earlier. But yeah, thanks for coming in and hanging out, and everybody else who hadn't put nothing in the chat, but I know y'all out there hanging out, taking a listen. I'll come back in I guess a few days once like I got some free time before a job, and I'll check in with you guys again. I'm gonna start looking at more, not just what the new tech is and what's going on with AI, but what the program is, what it can do, and what the implications of it are. Meaning, okay, this is cool if you use it, maybe you can make some money, maybe it does something cool, but it might have other implications against how you live and how the world treats you and how the powers that be kind of push against us, so to speak. So we got to get some physical know-how and use out of these things. So we'll try and aim for that. All right. All right, peoples. Love y'all. Thanks for coming through. I'm about to go photograph some football. I'll catch y'all in a little bit. Peace.